So I have a new piece of gear that I've been testing out that I'm incredibly excited about. This is the Sigma 14mm f1.8. This is their new art lens. I've been incredibly excited to test this lens out with night photography. I had the chance to do that in Iceland, and I want to show you guys what the results were. Like many of their other art lenses that they've come out with recently, they're not worried about size, and it's very apparent. This thing is pretty big, pretty heavy. It's almost as long as a 16-35, weighs more than a 16-35 f2.8. As you would expect from most art lenses, the build quality is really, really good. It's got kind of that kind of metal, kind of plastic feel. It's got the big bulbous front element, which you would also expect. It's a big, hefty, herky lens. You feel like you're holding quality in your hand. It's definitely not a lens for those that are trying to shave weight. It's a big, heavy lens. Personally, I don't mind because they didn't sacrifice any image quality for the sake of downsizing the lens. It does have one of these lens caps that are becoming more and more popular, where it actually slides over the built-in lens hood. Build quality aside, one of the first things I was very interested to check out is the focusing. I found the focusing to be quick and accurate. Everything you kind of expect from a premium lens, and this is a premium lens. It used to be that you could save money by shopping Sigma or Tamron, but this is coming in at that much. You're paying every bit as much for a Canon or a Nikon lens, but Canon, Nikon, they don't offer a 14mm f2.8. So why would you want a 14mm f2.8? Well, for one, you get that nice wide field of view, which is really handy for nightscapes. You get more of the night sky, you get a nice wide field of view, you get a longer shutter speed because you're shooting at 14mm, and f1.8 is gonna let in tons and tons of light. So that's what makes this particular lens so exciting for night photography. So let's go over to the computer. I'll show you some of the images I got, and we'll kind of talk about what I think of the lens. This is the first shot here. Settings wise, I was shooting at ISO 8000, f1.8 wide open for only 2.5 seconds. And when you photograph aurora, you got to keep your shutter speeds slower, or faster, I mean, than you would for a normal astrophotography shot, because the aurora is moving, and if your shutter speed's too long, you're going to get blurry aurora. With those settings, ISO 8000 for 2.5 seconds, just to give you an idea of how much light this lens brings in, straight out of camera, the exposure looked like this. We weren't blowing out our highlights in the aurora here, but there are definitely some aurora shots where I actually blew out the aurora because it was letting in so much light. So once I darken this down to a reasonable luminance value, if we look at the stars in the center here, I feel like I got my focus pretty well nailed. So the stars are looking good in the center of the frame. This was shot on the 5D Mark IV. As we get out to the corners where coma distortion starts to always reveal itself, you can see that we are getting the typical UFO pattern here. Getting our little seagulls in the corners. It's happening in both corners here. It's definitely happening kind of in that circular pattern that happens with coma distortion. But really, when you zoom out and you're viewing it full screen, it doesn't bother me as much as some. I didn't actually shoot any stopped down to like a f2 or something. I should have. I was so excited about getting to photograph aurora that I just went for it. I wasn't too worried about doing a test. I was kind of shooting for myself here. But you will notice that the coma distortion is showing up in all the different night shots here. And it's just up to you to decide whether that's acceptable or not. In a vertical shot here, this is another example of just how much light this lens brings in. This is ISO 6400 for 4 seconds at f1.8. And when I reset my exposure here, you can see we're almost blowing out our highlights. It lets in so much light, and that's so nice because we're able to get quite a bit of shadow detail. If I bump it up here, you can see we're getting quite a bit of shadow detail at only a 4-second exposure. That's pretty crazy. So when I darken this down here, we'll look at the center, and you can see, oops, Nick missed focus a bit here. So let's just not look at that one. Here's a shot that's been processed. And you can see as we zoom in here, we've added a bunch of contrast to really bring out the stars. And in a vertical composition, you're definitely still seeing the coma distortion, getting our UFOs up here in the corners. And this is a taste thing. This is definitely better than the 20 millimeter from Sigma. This is definitely better than anything Canon has. Can't speak to anything on the Nikon side, but I do feel like this is a very acceptable result from a coma distortion for a lens that lets in this much light. 14 millimeters and a f1.8. You kind of have to give it a pass at a point. To me, I feel like this is completely acceptable. This is the same shot straight out of camera, and you can see I was actually blowing out the aurora. And this one was ISO 10,000 for 5 seconds, letting in so much light. Here's another shot at ISO 6400 straight out of camera. And we'll look at our stars in the center here. Looking fairly sharp, like I got my focus. And then there's always just those few bright stars in the corners that start to really show the coma distortion. If we look at just general landscape type shots here, one of the things that you'll notice about this lens is it only stops down to f16, which is kind of weird, but at the same time doesn't bother me too much because really I don't stop down any further than f16 unless I'm doing it to get some kind of particular shutter speed for water shots. These are focus stack shots here. This first one, I focused on the mountain, I believe. Yeah, I focused on the mountain in the background. And then in the next frame, I focused on the grasses here. So once this goes sharp here, you can see that we're getting a decent amount of sharpness. I don't think it's like, you know, a painful razor amount of sharpness. It's pretty sharp, and I wish I would have taken more test shots comparing it against the 16-35. But again, I was kind of just shooting for myself, and I didn't think to do that because, you know, when you're shooting in the wind around sand, changing lenses, not really your favorite thing to do. Here's another focus stacked image. If we look at the sharpness in the back here, it's definitely nice and sharp. This again is at f16. I feel like it's as sharp as any other lens that I have, maybe a tiny bit less sharp than my 16-35, but it's very, very close. If I go to this frame here that's focused on our rock, nice detail. And this is at f16, which is essentially stopping down the lens all the way. So another important aspect of any wide-angle lens is how it's going to perform in the corners. Typically, the corners are where the image quality falls apart on wide-angle lenses. And this being a 14 millimeter, it's, you know, definitely going to suffer from it. If we look in the center here, this shot here is another image from a focus stack where I was focused in this area here. If we look here, this is the sharpness we're getting at f16. Go to the bottom of the frame, you know, the sharpness is starting to fall off mostly because of depth of field. Now, if we go to the corner, we can see what happens to the image quality here. We can see we're definitely getting some softening and some stretching going on in these corners here. Let's go to this other corner. And if you compare the sharpness here to the sharpness here, it doesn't look as bad in this particular corner. But there's definitely some image quality fall off in the corners, which is to be expected. But the thing about shooting a prime like this is you can't just zoom in past, you know, 14 millimeters to get a little extra sharpness in your corners. You're stuck with what you get in the corners. If I look at this image here, this is the full screen straight out of camera shot. I call this Maestro. But this is straight out of camera, not processed or anything. My focus point is clear back here. So if we look in our foreground, again, this is shot at f8. So this is the sharpness you're getting in the center of the bottom of the frame. As we go over to the sides, however, you'll start to see how much the image falls apart. It's really getting stretched, and you're getting that softening. If we look at this corner here, not as much fall off again. So the left side of this particular lens is suffering more from distortion than the right side. As far as lens flare, here's a shot where I shot directly into the sun. If I go straight out of camera, hit reset, this is what it was looking straight out of camera, and it did really well for lens flare. There was very few times where I had to go in and try to remove lens flare from the shots. So this is straight out of camera. If I darken down the shot, you can see I'm not really even seeing any lens flare, and I'm obviously shooting directly into the sun. There's a few shots like these over here where I got this tiny little dot here in the frame, and that's about the extent of the lens flare I got. So overall, really happy with the lens flare control. I'm content with the sharpness. I don't feel like it's the sharpest lens out there, but it's definitely sharp enough for me. I absolutely love this lens for the amount of light that it lets in. It's crazy that you can get, exposed shadows at only 2.5 seconds at ISO 8000. Granted, the aurora was really going off and it added a lot of ambient light to the shot, but still, this is going to be a Milky Way photographing machine. You do get a little bit of coma up here in the corners. You're going to get that with any fast prime, some worse than others. And the biggest question you have to ask yourself, is this going to be acceptable for you? You could come in here and clone out stars, but who has the time to do that? Not this guy. But for me, I think this is good enough. And I like this enough to where when it's in the budget, I think I'm going to pick this particular lens up because it lets in so much light and is such a workhorse for astrophotography. And getting back to the corner sharpness issue, this is a focus stacked, fully processed shot. If I zoom in here to center of the frame, this is the kind of sharpness we're getting. I focus stacked this, so this rock here is still nice and tack sharp. But even though I focus stack this, as we get to the corner, I'm not able to make these extreme corners very sharp. There's just a lot of image quality loss, and that's just something you're going to have to kind of accept with a lens like this. You can, because it's such a wide angle lens, there's a lot of times where you can get your shot and then crop in a tiny bit like this, and you end up with nice sharp corners, but that's not why you're buying a 14mm lens. Overall, I think it's a great lens. Got a little bit of coma distortion, but I feel like the pros outweigh the cons, and it lets in so much light that it makes it a really compelling lens. So if I was to kind of sum up what this lens is good at, what I think of the lens and who this lens is for, this lens is definitely for landscape photographers and night sky photographers. It is so nice to be able to suck in all of that light at f1.8, but get that nice wide field of view. Image quality is absolutely excellent. I found myself using this more often than my 16-35 because you tend to get addicted to those really wide focal lengths. So I loved this lens. It was kind of weird that it only stops down to f16. Sharpness wise, it's definitely right there with all the other premium lenses. You're definitely not sacrificing any sharpness. The coma distortion isn't a deal breaker at all. It's present, but it's not bad. It's not bad like some of the other prime lenses with really fast apertures have been. All right, so hopefully this helps in your decision. Maybe this lens is for you. I think I might be buying one. That's the worst part about borrowing lenses like this, which if you do want to borrow lenses, you can go to BrentRentsLenses.com, which is where I picked this up, and you can pick up a rental there and try it out for yourself. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.